If you'd like to talk about your own Bigfoot encounter, or if you're looking for help from a Bigfoot investigator in your area, email me at bigfootcrossroads@gmail.com. Also, be sure to check out the Facebook page and give it a like at facebook.com/Bigfoot Crossroads.
The reason why I do the call that I do is because when we lived in Liberty, when I was 9 years old, I was out building a tree house. We lived on, this was all in the woods out there. We lived on 10 acres, had 160 in front of us, and there was all woods behind us. But on our 10 acre, we had 5 of it fenced off, and then another 5 behind it fenced off with a pond in the far corner. And I was by the house, and I was building me a tree house. And I was just hammering away for hours, and right at dusk, heard this loud scream noise, and the noise just, it vibrated through my whole body. It was so like a dinosaur.
I am here with 2 sisters from northeastern Oklahoma. I will leave it up to them to share their names and whatever information they want to. I've known one of them quite a long time. She's helped me out in various things in the Bigfoot world. They both have some great stories, and her sister has had some amazing encounters. How are you ladies doing? And thank you for coming on Bigfoot Crossroads.
Thank you. It's good to be with you, Matt. I'm Dana.
I'm Charla.
And you guys are crazy Bigfoot chicks.
Yes.
Yes.
Now,
Yes, definitely.
how in the world did you guys get involved in this crazy thing?
Probably my fault. Because I'd seen one, and I've been telling her about it for years.
So do you want to kind of walk us through the details of your sighting?
Me and my ex-husband now, and our 2 little kids, and my sister-in-law and her boyfriend, we went fishing down at this river all the time. And we just decided to go one day, and it was kind of I think it had been raining that night. It was kind of a overcast day. We went down there to the river, and my husband at that time, I told him, you know, when we get down there, there's only one good spot on that river to fish. And I was like, no, don't use all your poles, you know, I want a spot. So, oh, he is so sweet, you know, he told me, okay. Well, we get down there, and I'm trying to get the kids out and get the poles ready for them and everything. And whenever I get down to the spot where he's at, he had put all his poles out. So I was pretty mad at him. So I thought, well, I'm going to go off down around the bank here. And there was another little spot, but it was across the river, but it was kind of a honey hole where they went noodling at. So I thought, well, I'm going to go throw out over in that hole, and hopefully I'll catch me a big one, you know.
And noodling, for those who aren't familiar with the term, this is kind of an Okie thing. They do it in other states, but Okies are proud of it. Basically, you dive down into the water and catch gigantic catfish with your bare hands, and hope that you don't grab a hold of a beaver tail or a snake or something like that in the process.
Or a turtle.
I pulled some good ones out of there, though. So I took off down around the bank, and the night before, me and my sister-in-law had made up our own hooks, and we made a double treble hook together, and then we had got this liver to put on it. I'm talking a big wad of liver on this hook. And then we took red pantyhose and had put up over the whole thing to kind of hold it, because it's kind of hard to fish on a river. But we kind of made it where it wouldn't really get hung up, you know, where you wouldn't rip it off and everything.
Right.
But anyways, I got around there to the spot and cast it out there, and let's sit there for a minute, and it felt like it was hung up. I kept pulling on it just lightly, and And finally it comes out, but it feels like it felt like it was going over grass. Anybody that fishes know, when you fish, you can feel the bottom, whether it's mud or rock,
Yeah.
if you fish enough. But it felt like grass. So I went ahead and reeled it in to make sure that I didn't lose anything off of it, and looked at it, and there was no grass on it, no mud, no nothing. I threw it back out there and was fishing again, didn't get any bites. Started to reel it up again. It felt hung again, so I did the same thing over and nothing on it. And I don't remember how many times I'd done that for sure. But I look up and there's this log coming up out of the water. And I was thinking, oh, darn it. Because if that was a log down in that honey hole, I thought I just ruined my fishing spot. I just pulled the whole huge log up. And I was sitting there watching it, and it was floating on the water. And it just looked like a muddy, mossy log. Like, it was a huge one, though. I was thinking, dang, I didn't know there'd be anything over there like that. And I thought, oh, shoot, it's going to go downstream, and it's going to get into all their lines and mess their fishing up. And I think I might have thrown out there not quite as far or something, and I just remember looking, and after a little bit, and there was no log. I mean, the log hadn't went down the stream, and I thought, well, maybe it sunk back down or something, and I really wasn't thinking about it too hard. I sit there and I threw back over there, and I was fishing that spot, and it wasn't getting hung up anymore. I checked it wasn't getting hung up, and I don't know how long. I was over there fishing for quite a while, and all of a sudden there's this, I don't know how to explain it. It looked like a little dark brown thing floating on the water, getting closer to me, and I kept fishing and sitting there looking at it, and then it was getting closer and closer, but it was raising up out of the water a little more at a time as it got closer to me. And I kept thinking, what is that? What in the world? And I think I might have reeled my line in at that time or something. And I don't really know if I was mesmerized, just sitting there staring at it or what, and I kept looking at it, and I thought, that is hair. And then I could see, like, whenever you come up from the water, like if you've been underneath the water, how your hairline or apart. And I could see a scalp, and it was lighter color than the hair. Now I couldn't say it was gray. I mean, it wasn't white, but it was lighter colored than the hair. But I just kept staring, thinking, oh my gosh, that's hair, And the hair was pretty long, and it was hanging over the face, But then I started seeing eyeballs, and these eyes were as big as the bottom of a pop can, and they were just solid black.
Now, at this point, had the eyes come above the surface of the water, or are you seeing this beneath the surface?
Well, at first they were below the surface, because all I was seeing, I guess, was hair floating on the water or something, And as it come over there, it just slowly raised up. And I'm guessing probably to its nose, but I couldn't see the nose because this hair was hanging all over, like down the middle, and a little piece maybe over the eye, but it was real long on the sides. And I just kept staring at it. I mean, your mind cannot believe what you're seeing. You just cannot accept it. And as I was looking at it, not believing what I was seeing, it turns its eyes, and it looks down there where my husband was. And then it turns its eyes back. And I thought, oh my gosh, this is something alive. And my first thought was to take that pole and just hit it between the eyes with it. This thing is about 10 to 12 feet in the water from me, I mean, I could have got it good.
What were you thinking as you're like trying to process what's happening? Were you thinking like, is this a person or an animal or what?
I knew it was not a person. It looked like an animal. I mean, because the eyes were too big to be a person, but it had hair. I don't know. Your mind cannot comprehend what you're seeing. I mean, your mind goes into 100 different things.
Mm-hmm. Did the things like slowly coming above the surface as it's making its way towards you?
Yeah, like a sneaky cat. That's what I always tell Dana, this thing reminded me of different animals all in one or something, it was sneaky like a cat. And
She said you felt like, I think you said you felt like it thought maybe you didn't see it, or it was just...
Yes. I mean, in my mind, whenever I thought to throw that pole, then I thought, no, don't do that, because the kids were down there. And I thought, there's no way I could run down there and get them up in the truck before something would get me.
Did it ever come any further out of the water, or what did it do?
It just sit there and stared at me. In my mind, I was thinking, okay, just, even though it's there, it's that close, you could see it. I said, just act like you don't see it. So just keep doing what you're doing, fishing. So I thought, okay, I'm going to fake it out, act like I don't see it. Because it makes me wonder if it wasn't young, because it really thought it was hiding. I mean, it had to have. And so I thought, well, I'm not going to haul off and throw my line, with my pole. So I kind of did this toss thing. But I was so nervous that when I tossed it, that liver hit right within a foot of it. And here's me trying to pretend that I didn't see it. And I was thinking, please, God, don't let it grab that, because that hook's so big. I thought that would make it mad. Whatever this is, it's going to come out of the water and kill me, So I kind of, with the line thrown out that close, I kind of tugged on it. Then the current kind of pulled it down in front of it, and I kind of reeled it up, and then I cast it back out there. Not cast, but I tossed it. But I kept doing this. And then I think I might have tossed it to the other side of it the last time I did it. And then I let it flow down to the edge of the river. And instead of reeling it up to me, I reeled it as I walked to it when I left. And I never looked back. I just felt like I needed to act like I totally didn't see it,
Didn't you say you felt like you shouldn't run?
Yes, I felt like I shouldn't run. I mean, but this went on for quite a while. It had to have been with me casting out and doing all this for a while until I felt safe inside, till I felt safe is whenever I finally walked off. But I walked slowly, so I don't know if it worked, though. It didn't come after me.
Did you feel like it was a threat, or if it was just like trying to look at you, or what was your internal gut feelings on this whenever it was happening?
I felt like it was just up there spying on me, and it felt like it was really hidden, but then I wonder if it was hungry too. Maybe it could smell that big wad of liver, I don't know. But if that thing wasn't a log, that I was pulling on that was floating, it could have been a Bigfoot. I don't know. I mean, it seemed like a lot, but it was a huge, long log. I mean, and that's weird for something that big to just float up, because I was not tugging on that hard at all. It just kind of felt like it slipped through some grass and then...
Well, I mean, there's a couple of things that are interesting about it. I mean, you said you're in a spot where a lot of people noodle at.
Yes.
And I'm wondering if it might have been there trying to catch some fish or something, taking advantage of the noodling holes.
It might have been, because this was at 9 or 10 a.m., I think. I'm pretty sure that we went earlier, but it was really overcast. It was a day where people probably wouldn't have really gone down there.
Mm-hmm.
And we fished there almost every day and take those kids would run up and down that bank and stuff. But we had never went that early before.
In hindsight, had anything ever happened before that you think might be a Bigfoot in that area?
I don't think so, but when you go past the part where I was fishing and seen that, it's not very far along down there till it ends, And we had a tree down there that we used to tie off the fish stringer.
Mm-hmm.
And you know that fish stringer would come up untied and missing. And it happened more than once, too. And we would just think, oh, the kids got over there playing, you know, but I don't think they were.
Did you walk over and tell your husband what had just happened?
Oh, yeah. I walked straight down there and I told him, I said, I just seen something down there and I don't know what it was. And I told him, I said, I think it could have been a Bigfoot, but I wasn't for sure because I didn't know what a Bigfoot looked like. It's the only thing I could think of, you know, that could possibly be something different. Of course, they all kind of stand up and look down there and go out to the edge, look over there, and there's nothing there, of course. And they pretty much made fun of me and didn't believe me.
Really?
And I was scared. I was pretty much done. I thought, well, I'll never get mad again and walk off. That's for sure. By myself.
Dana, what did you think when your sister told you this?
I believed her. There was no doubt in my mind she had seen something, you know, for sure. And I know for a fact, too, if it would have been anything recognizable, she would have known it. I mean, we're country girls. You know, we've grown up around everything, seen everything, animals, fished in the lakes, rivers, and I just know she would have known if it would have been something common.
Mm-hmm. When we went home, I got on the internet, though, and the first thing I did is looked up every animal on ground or water, you know, that would be in Oklahoma to make sure that it wasn't, that I didn't see something else.
Right.
But then you look up Bigfoot and it didn't really show you pictures of that, so I wasn't for sure. But
well, no, I mean, you don't hear a lot of sighting reports where people see them in water, but I mean, it does happen. The picture in my head of this thing, you know, poking its head up out of the water all slow like that is just, mm-hmm. I mean, it had to have been absolutely terrifying for you. I don't know how you didn't keep from throwing your fishing pole and run off screaming.
I wanted to. I mean, that was my first thought. If it wouldn't have been for my kids, they were probably they were 3 or 4 or 4 or 5. They were little bitty. And then we had to park. We had to go into the woods to get to the river there. And it went up a little hill. And I thought, there's no way I could run down that far, pick up 2 little kids and get them in that truck if something was chasing me.
Mm-hmm.
It's not easy terrain down there. If you have pictures of it, you'd understand. And it's, you know, you just can't run straight off in the woods either because it is thick. It's thick.
I mean, I didn't want anything to happen to my kids, and I wasn't going to have no beast, whatever it was, chasing me.
Had you guys heard of any other Bigfoot sightings in that area previous to this?
No.
No.
In fact, I've only heard of just recently, I have heard some sightings around here on the same river, but further downstream.
Is this the event that got you guys kicked off all interested in Bigfoot?
My sighting?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, I had always heard about Bigfoot, though. I had seen the Boggy Creek movie when I was littler.
Mm-hmm.
So that I always had an interest in it, but never, you know what I mean? It was not an everyday think. I didn't think about it. You know, I'm talking like maybe every 4 years or something, I might see something, make me think about it. But yeah, not until her actual thing, I'm like, well, because you think, you hear the Boggy Creek or you hear about Patty, so, but I actually didn't think they were in Oklahoma. I was one of those that was like, oh, they're only on the coast. So,
yeah, your mind can't believe what you're seeing when you see it. I can't explain that to anyone. It's just, I don't even know how to explain it.
So after you had this sighting, I mean, I mean, honestly, it's a traumatic event. I mean, I've been through it, and that's one of the difficult parts about it, because people who haven't encountered one of these things tend to think of it kind of tongue in cheek, or they might have a general interest or something like that, but they don't understand the impact that it has on a person. How did this sighting impact your life? Like, did you start getting kind of paranoid? Did you go back fishing at that spot again? Like, did it change the way you approach the woods or anything?
I wouldn't go back to that spot at all. I told him no way. This is a spot that we went to almost every day. We fished a lot. He was off work at that time. He'd been laid off. So we fished there about every day. And it was just a good spot for the kids, or I thought. Had a nice little beach around, the river. And no, I would not go back. And I think maybe a little while after that, somebody had a bonfire, and he made me go down there with him. And it was that night. And I remember I was so terrified because I was thinking, you don't have to worry about what's in the woods because it's in the water too. There's no safe spot.
Not going swimming.
I kept telling him, I'm not staying long. Let's go.
So Dana, how did it change the way you looked at things?
Well, I wanted to see it. And I'm still on a quest. It's been over 5 years.
You may not realize this, but talking to you on a regular basis, you guys get out in the field as much as any of the big name researchers out there.
Well, after her sighting, we always wanted to go look for it. I don't think there was like too many things like public at that time, like people that went and researched it. You might just see a special on it. And it was always referring back to that Patty, basically. But we were always like, oh yeah, we want to go look for this thing. And so I guess it was, it was right. So I guess it was about 6 or 7 years ago. We decided, okay, we're going to get out. We're going to go look for this thing. And that's where we started. We went right back down to the river where she had her sighting. And it didn't let us down.
It was standing there waiting on you?
Well, no. It wasn't waiting on us, but it didn't just happen like the first night we drive up. In fact, the first night we went out there, I was so pumped up that I was I terrified myself. Nothing even happened, and I couldn't even breathe. I was out of breath. There wasn't nothing going on. I was like, but then we started, doing some calls and just things we heard, like anything we heard that they might do, we tried it. So we heard about tree knocks. So we go out there and do tree knocks. And we actually got some really good responses of that. And I don't think that was anything anybody could imitate, because unless they had some kind of massive drum thing I don't know how to describe it. It was like something massive hitting a tree. It was nowhere near my little wood knock I made. But it responded back, and it was big. And that just mesmerized me from there on.
Well, one time it sounded like a ape hitting its chest.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 boom,
Yeah, it did. It did sound like that at one time. It sounded like something would be, like when you hit your chest, that sound, but it was just extremely loud.
Now, do you guys usually go to the same area down there by the river whenever you research?
Yeah, we go down there, and then we have 2 other spots we go to that are in a total different area.
Well, when I go with her to the other spot, I always get little rocks thrown at me. And then one night, I'll let her tell it, but her son and her stepson had a slingshot shooting it across the...
Oh, yeah. Yeah, that was really cool. They wanted to bring their slingshots, so they were shooting them across the river. And the next thing we know, when they would shoot one, a rock would come back.
From the other side of the river.
From the other side of the river. So every time they shot one over, one would come back. And then my stepson at the time, he was like, can I do a call? You know, I know people are going to probably freak out because I took a child, but only once or twice. We were still young and learning.
You only left him taped to the tree twice. It's no big deal.
That's exactly right.
He had a flashlight.
Yeah. He was safe. Yeah, but he was like, can I do a call? And I was like, yeah, you can do one. Well, he did a little call or something. We didn't hear nothing. But then a few minutes later, I hear this gibberish from down by the river. But there was these big, tall bushes and weeds there going into the woods, and it was, you know, kind of that way, so I couldn't see anything. But we all heard that, and it sounded like talking, you know, just a mumble, a deep, you know, woo, 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 woo. It was real strange.
And why do you think that it wasn't just like a person or something?
There's no way it could have been. The tone, I don't know how to describe that. It was a gibberish, this deep guttural gibberish, you know, like coming from the gut.
Did it sound like just random noises or like a language?
It sounded like a language to me. And it wasn't very long. And it got real quiet after that. And then a tree knock started after that. And another one, let's see, on the side of the river that we were at doing that, but way behind us in the woods was another one of those real deep, you know, loud hits. But then right after that, on the other side of the river, there was a response to that one, and it was real fast, rapid. And I've only heard that once. I have never heard that again. But it was, like, you know, super loud.
Right. So you mentioned your son and your stepson. So, like, is your son actively involved in this? Does he go out with you?
Mm-hmm. He did before he graduated and moved away on me. Now he's in the sick of the Ozarks, though, and he's freaked out.
Well, now he's in prime Bigfoot territory.
He is.
But has your family eased up on the kidding and stuff? Are they supportive, or do they think y'all are nuts?
Well, probably a lot of them think we're nuts, I guess. Well, I mean, too,
they go with us.
they do go with it. They want to go with us, though.
Yeah.
They laugh, but then they want to go. And then if something happens, they immediately turn and just stare at us because that's what we've described to them, you know, and they're just sitting there staring at us like, so they're all believers when they're with us.
I try to tell my kids the reason why I tell them is if they're going to go camping or hiking and stuff, you know, just to watch over the kids because we don't know what this is. And they're out there. You know, I tell them just for their own protection, just to watch out. I mean, I've never had an experience where one was going to try to hurt me that I feel like, you know.
Uh-huh.
You did get bluff charged, though.
Do you mind? I know you already told it before we started recording, but could you go through that story again?
Decided to make a little spot in the woods and made a little wood pile and a little urine on it. Then I got up and followed the trail down to a bluff, and then I just squatted down and was looking over this bluff into the river, and all of a sudden I hear this running. I mean, but I could hear it, and it was 7 steps from me squatting down to the time I stood up and turned around, and it had to have been right there, whatever it was. And there was nothing there at all. So then I kind of got scared, and I took off running, and I made me a new trail right through the briars.
But you didn't hear anything like breathing or walking off or anything?
No, there was no walking off. Whatever it was had to have been right there. It had to have been within a few feet from me.
Is that the formation that you made where you put the beer bottle on top?
Yes.
And before anybody says anything, no, it wasn't her beer bottle. She just found it.
No, I don't drink. But it had an old label on it, so it was an old Coors Light. And of course we went down there and checked, and it was still there and everything. But a little while down the line, we only lived a few miles from there, and I had a little tree patch that's behind my house, little woods, and it had a little empty spot in there. And I always took my dog up and down walking on there, and looked in there one day, and there was an old Coors Light bottle sitting there. But I had rocks tossed at me. Some nights there was limbs broken, different things, and I was just learning. I didn't really know what was going on.
Do you think it was the same beer bottle?
Definitely. Well, I mean, where would that have come from?
And it's an old style. It was the old style of beer bottle that they don't even make anymore.
Because we always threw tomatoes and stuff out in that little spot. There was nothing there.
Is this the area where you're saying you found the corn?
Yes, where I put the corn cobs out.
Mm-hmm.
I just throw it out there for the animals. There was 6 or 7. Threw them out there, and they'd been out there for days. Nothing had touched them, and then I went out there one day, and all the corn was eaten off. The cobs weren't hurt at all. I mean, I picked it up. They were completely eaten and put back in a row, a perfect row.
Like side by side, just all lined up?
Like side by side in a perfect row.
Well, I just don't think any animal would have done that.
And I was thinking, how could that squirrel have ate that and put those down there perfectly like that? It's like, I just don't think no little animal would leave him like that.
So, Dana, do you think these things have followed you guys home?
Absolutely. Because we were dumb and didn't really know what we were doing and never thought that, hey, we only live, a mile and a half, from where we're down there doing calls. We're calling these things up. And we'd been doing that for quite a while. So, yes, I do. And, I had told you that I had heard them. Well, I was in my house. I live right on the edge of town. So, I live right by the highway and then there's just fields and, of course, homes, but down that way towards the river. So I was at home. It was late at night. It was midnight. I was watching a TV program, and I went to go smoke. I had a window, but I didn't have a screen in this window, and I leaned out because I didn't smoke in my house, but I leaned my head out, and the next thing I know, I am hearing this screaming coming from that field. I had not heard that before. This is still, in our, I call our first year of researching here. And I'm hearing this screaming, but it is undeniably, it's just, I don't know, just the recordings that you've heard online, but it's live, it's in that field, and it's the loudest thing that I have ever heard.
How far away do you think it was from your house?
Let's see, I'm going to say almost like a football field and a half, maybe, or maybe just a football field.
That's not that far.
I'm hearing this loud. Anyone that lives around me could have heard it if they were out.
Well, didn't you say your mom heard it?
Yes. My mom lived next door to me, and I didn't know she was hearing it at the time. But I'm hearing this, and my heart just fell to my feet. It scared me so bad. Well, then I start hearing my phone ring. after I had sit there and listened to this thing for a while. And I ran to the phone, and it's my mom, and she's like, "Are you hearing this?" And I said, "Yeah, I am." And she's like, "What in the world?" And I was like, it's a Bigfoot. But I mean, she believed me, she was like, "Did you hear the big one before that one?" And I was like, "No, I didn't hear it. I was watching TV." And she told me that she heard a loud roar. She heard a really loud roar. Then she heard coyotes. And then this other scream that I heard. That's when it started up. And then I told you that it would, it would scream. It would go from, it would fade in and out is the only way I can describe it. So it would get extremely loud, and then it would fade out. And then it would go extremely loud again and fade out. But it just kept doing this call. And one thing I felt like when I was hearing it, and I don't know what made me think this, and I don't have any absolute way to prove it, but I kept thinking, that's a female. And I don't know why I thought that, and I don't have no way to prove that, and I don't know.
But that was just a feeling that you got.
Yeah, it was just a feeling I got, but that was before my mom had even told me she had heard this really deep one before that. So then I was wondering, but I don't know if maybe they were hunting the coyotes or what.
Did it sound aggressive or scared or mournful? Did it have a certain sound to it?
It sounded aggressive, extremely aggressive. Actually, my mom is in here in the room with us, and she's shaking her head yes, too. Because there was no doubt about that. The aggressiveness was there.
Have you heard this since then or any more times?
I have not. No, I have not heard that ever again either.
Have you guys had any other occurrences around the house?
The only thing recent we had was a footprint that my sister found out here, and that was just accidentally.
But I've been smelling a skunk out here, or I thought it was a skunk. I mean, it stunk super bad, and my dog's going crazy on his leash, and I just thought it was a skunk, and I'd make him go back in. But when I was walking over here, I found the barefoot, muddy footprints, and they were about, an inch or so deep in that mud right
in the
there.
mud.
But they were only about 7.5. I mean, I put my foot up to it. It's pretty close to my foot, so.
Well, like I tell people, they aren't born 12 feet tall.
Yeah.
No.
Everybody's always, expecting a giant thing and like a giant footprint, but that's, usually not the case.
Over there at our trailer that we had put in, where I told her our house burnt down, after we had that trailer put in, every Friday night, my boyfriend, he would be in there in the living room, and I'd always go to bed a couple of hours before he did. And something would hit the wall of that trailer so hard it'd wake me straight up out of a dead sleep. I mean, it was so loud. And then one of the Fridays, it hit the back door, or it sounded like the back door. And I kept telling my boyfriend, because he did not believe in this at all. He thought I was nuts. And I had to go to work Saturday morning, and I hadn't got to tell him that it did it again. Well, his dad lived next door, and he had went and ate breakfast with his dad. And whenever I got off work and he had got home, I told him, I said, "Oh, I forgot to tell you that whatever it was hit the side of that thing so hard last night again." And the look on his face, it's like, "Oh my God." He goes, "You're not going to believe this." I was like, "What?" He goes, "When I was sitting there eating breakfast with Dad, he told me last night that something was hitting our house so loud that it woke him up at his house."
Wow.
And this happened for quite a while, every Friday night.
I think my favorite thing that I've found is probably my handprint down in the gravel. Because you see feet all the time.
Right.
Or, you can if you get out there and look. But it's undeniable when you find a massive handprint. And I remember, that it took 3 of my fingers for 1 finger of that, the width of that.
And where did you find that?
That was down by the river where she had her sighting.
Pressed down
in gravel, dirt that would be very hard to make a print. And it's if you'll look at it really close, because you'll be like, well, you can tell that it has its knuckles inward, you know what I mean, like folded.
I think that was
out,
really,
and then the 4 fingers are bent, and there's an impression of that. But that was always my favorite, just because it was so different and undeniably big.
I think that handprint was close to a spot where I had peed at one night by the truck. And then I think we went the next day and that handprint was there.
Well, just to explain that too, she was on a water pill.
Yes. I could not hold it.
When you're in the woods, you have to make do, because you can't go running home every time.
So, like, you guys were telling me a story that kind of relates to a lot of other stories that I've heard from people. Could you tell us about the trip down to the bridge and what happened?
Okay, this is the same area where she had her sighting, and they were building a new bridge down there, and it was completed. It was all the way across, but they still had, their equipment and things on there, and it wasn't open yet. But the roadway to it was open. People were down there fishing, riding their 4-wheelers and other things like that. But we had drove up there. This was one of our mini trips, parked right on the side. And the next thing we know, there's, I believe it was 5 trucks.
Yeah.
There was 5 trucks. There was 4 behind us, and then 1 drove up to us. And he got out, and he come up to the window, and he said, "You guys are not supposed to be here." And we were like, "Well, we're not on the bridge." And, because we knew you're not supposed to be on there. And he said, "Well, you're not supposed to be here." And he told my sister, he said, "It's a what do you say? It's a $500 fine."
Yeah.
He said and they are a $500 fine if we catch you again up here. And they were the bridge inspectors.
He goes, "Don't you know?" He goes, "Don't you know? This is a $500 fine." That's the way he said it.
And you guys are just on, like, a public road.
We're on a public road, just sitting there.
And did the vehicles have any kind of markings on them or any signs?
They had no markings. They were darker but different colors, but their windows were solid blacked out. I couldn't see anybody else in the other trucks because they were that black. Only the one guy that got out of his truck and pulled up. And then when we left, 2 of them, as I was turning around, 2 of them pulled up, and as soon as I took off, they took off. So I had 2 in front of me, and I had the 3 behind me.
What time of day was it?
6 or 7, but it's in the summer, so it was still daylight out,
So some pretty intense bridge inspectors late in the evening.
And there was a guy on a 4-wheeler, and there was a guy down there fishing, but we get in trouble.
Have you guys ever ran into anything else like that while you were out down there?
Here recently, I think it was a GRDA guy, come up to the window, and he just kept asking us, "Are you guys okay? Are you guys okay?"
Let me just say, this is the first time he would come up and he said, "We're okay." And this is the first time, and I kind of did it out of frustration. I just looked straight at him and said, "Oh, we're just Bigfoot hunting." It kind of took him by surprise, but he goes, "Oh, He goes, there's nothing out here that's not here in the daytime, too. And I was like, that's exactly right, buddy. But he didn't make us leave. He just said, okay, you guys have a good night and be careful.
I thought it was just strange because he kept saying, are you sure you guys are okay? And
Yeah.
we just got there, too.
But we didn't stay around, though. I mean, we just went ahead and left.
Rumor has it that Bigfoot isn't the only unexplained thing creeping around out there where you guys live. What are some of the other things that people encounter out there?
Well, this area is well known. I believe on the internet, if they want to look it up, it's known as the Hornet Spook Light, or, which I dispute greatly, it's known as the Missouri Spook Light, which I say, why is that? Because it's in Oklahoma. I'm just saying the roads you park on are in Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. It is on the Missouri border, but I don't know why it's known as the Missouri Spook Light. But we just, that's just been something we've grown up with. It's very mysterious. There's the Spook Light, and then we've got the Little People Bridge. Little People Bridge is known for the little people. It's Native American. We have 9 tribes around here in this area, and it's just well known for the tales of the little people. I've been told by several that, Native American, that they still to this day, they're like, they offer them gifts or something so they're not mischievous. I guess they're little bitty people that roam the woods, and
they're supposed to be stick people too, but I don't know what that's supposed to be.
Tree people. That's what they call them around here. They had something called tree people, but I always wondered if it was maybe Sasquatch by the way they, because they would describe them as big, tall, but, tree people is what they called them. And I mean, they're very serious about it. Like, they warn you, they're like, don't get near the woods. You need to be careful.
Have you guys ever encountered any of that stuff?
Well, we've always grown up seeing the Spook Light. That is real. A lot of people come from out of town and see that.
Dana had an experience on the bridge.
I had a terrifying experience on the Little People Bridge because we were told to. This is one of those old wrought iron bridges. It's got the big rivets in it. Mm-hmm. Sturdy old bridge. It's over a real pretty creek that leads to the river.
It's not there no more. They have a new bridge there now. But
they tore that bridge out, but it was the old bridge at the time. They didn't tear the bridge out because I don't think it was right. They widened the road is what they did because they were making it a more easier access for trucks. But at the time, I had talked to this man, and he was a Native American guy, and I asked him about it, and he said, oh, yes, it's very real. And he had told me, he goes, you go out there, of course he warned me, and told me to be very careful. He goes, but take them an offering. He said, take them some candy and, just some money. He said, just some pennies and just leave it. And he said, that way they won't bother you. So I'm like, okay, so I'm all excited, and I go tell my sister and our friends, and we load up everybody in her minivan. And we had a carload. And so I got candy and I got some pennies. We drove out to the bridge, and I got out. And I made sure on those rails, because they're real wide anyway, but I made sure I laid the pennies flat, and I put the candy up there, and then we drove up the road and a ways, and then we're giving it some time, and then we drove back. So we stopped. She stopped the minivan not on the bridge. The minivan was not on the bridge. And I get out, and I go back up there, and I feel, and everything is gone. The candy, the money, there's nothing there.
What?
That it was all gone. Yeah. So I was freaked out about that. And I turn around and I holler because I had left my, did I leave my door open or closed?
Yeah, you left the door open.
Okay, I left the door open. But I hollered back and I was like, oh my God, it is gone. It's all gone. And right when I said that, that entire bridge started shaking violently. It freaked me out so bad. This is what I said. Everybody makes fun of me when I get scared. But there was also next to the bridge, it was attached to the bridge, but it was like welded on there and braced with brackets. And it had like the weight limit and everything for the bridge on there. And that thing was completely twisting from side to side as the bridge was shaking. So I'm thinking, okay, my first thing I'm thinking is earthquake. But the van's not shaking.
Just the bridge.
Just the bridge. They're all witnessing that. They can see it. They can see it happening. And I start screaming.
Well, why were you the one that had to go out on the bridge?
Because I'm the brave one. I'm like all for it. I'm like, I have to, see it to believe it. So I was not scared doing it until that happened. It starts shaking and I start screaming and I take off running, but my mind's not accepting it. And I'm like, this isn't happening. So I stop. So I'm like running like 3 steps and I stop. And I'm looking all around, everything's still shaking, and I start screaming again. And I take off running again. So it takes me forever to get back to that van because I keep doing that. And I can't help it. I'm screaming, stopping, looking, everything's shaking. I'm screaming again, running. And I ran straight into the van door. I mean...
And she's pulling it backwards instead of pushing it.
I mean, yeah, I couldn't even function. The doors were open.
It was scary, but we couldn't even get scared. We were laughing at her.
I believe they call that discombobulated.
Yes, I was completely discombobulated.
I don't know what she was doing.
Well, it was terrifying.
Sort of coming to the van and pushing the door and getting in, she's doing this weird stuff.
The door's open and I'm still pulling it backwards towards me. But I mean, there's nothing to explain that. It never happened again, and I took, I've been told other friends about it. We went out there with a really huge group of people one time. There was a lot of guys. We took my friend's daughter's senior class out there. So we had a ton of, healthy, stout kids out there. I told them the story, so they all got on that side of that bridge, and even that sign, the pole, and so there was probably 10 of them or more, 10 to 12 on one side just to see if they could shake it. They could not move that bridge, nor could they move that sign or even twist it.
I don't even know how to explain the missing pennies and candy.
No. That went out the window, though, when the bridge shook. But it was amazing at the time. I was like, God, it's gone, guys. I was like, it's all gone.
I could think maybe, a raccoon or something, but it doesn't sound like there's enough time for a raccoon to, find it and the human scent being off of it.
Yeah, if you knew exactly where we drove up and turned around and came back, we would have either caught it there or it would have had no time to take all of it. But there was nothing there. I mean, there was not one penny left.
Did you ever try to recreate everything?
Yeah, we tried to take more money out there and stuff, but it never shook. But we did hear strange noises and things.
Did you lose any more money?
No. I wasn't going to give them anything but pennies, but maybe that's what they were mad about.
Maybe that's what they were mad about.
I was being cheap. I know that's strange. That had nothing to do with Bigfoot, but we're right here in the Four Corners, and it's just strange things that are in this place.
I like hearing about anything strange. I mean, and there's a lot of things that people end up experiencing, while looking for Bigfoot that don't necessarily seem Bigfoot related, but it's still interesting.
Right.
Well, what's next for you guys? What's on your future list, your goals for this Bigfoot adventure?
Well, I had a place I wanted to check out. I just had a feeling about here for a while, and we went the other night. And of course, I'm terrified and everything, and something hollered at me on my side, and it went, "Hey," which I can't explain that. Now, I didn't do any calls. She was making some of her calls, but
something said, "Hey."
Something said, "Hey," or sounded like it said, "Hey."
No, it said, "Hey."
Like in a deep voice, or how would you describe it?
A 25, 30-year-old guy, but in a deeper, like, "Hey."
Which it could have been, I mean, that's
hey, maybe.
You never know.
There shouldn't be nobody right there, though.
I mean, you wouldn't think if this is in the middle of nowhere.
And the look on my face, and I'm telling her, "Start it up. Let's go."
Time to go.
Yeah, on my side.
We don't hesitate. When we say that, we're on it.
Hey, better to live and fight another day.
Yeah. I think one of those scarier things, too, I had backed up to the edge of the river and with the truck. So my door was right by these extremely tall weeds. I'm talking like they were about 4.5, 5 feet tall. But then there was a bluff, and then it went down to the river, straight into the river, maybe with a little bit of a bank there. But then this was at night. This was dark. But we were out, and we had sitting on the back of the truck, and we were doing calls and different things. And I hear a swoosh in the water. So I'm really listening. I hear it again, but it's coming out of the water. I can hear it come on the bank. And when I heard that, because my door's right there where it's coming up. But we were on the back of the truck, and I panicked. It just was all, so I don't know how I'm going to see one if I panic like this. But I heard it coming up, and it was right there. And I just told him, what did I scream at? Did I
You didn't.
tell you this?
We just seen your face, so we took off running and we jumped in the truck. And
Yeah.
she goes back.
And that's again, when I get scared, I do some of the weirdest, this is another time instead of running to the door, I'm sitting here trying to shut the bed on the truck.
She goes back and tries to shut the bed of the pickup.
And then I get scared. I'm hearing this coming out of the water.
Does it sound like something like walking?
Yes, like it's like
swoosh, swoosh, swoosh.
like swoosh, swoosh, like coming out of the water. Like I can hear the water dripping. This was a quiet night, no wind blowing, and I'm running to the door of that truck, and it was leaning because we were up. I was backed up on a hill. She's already laughing. See, I told you they laugh at me. Anyways, I'm hearing this thing, and I'm like, it's like we're talking 5 feet from my door, and
She's
the weeds
trying to
are
get
there.
in, and she is slipping and falling out of the truck.
So I jump in.
We start laughing so hard we could not quit.
And I'm panicked because my butt is in those weeds where that thing's coming up. And I just have this imagination of this thing grabbing me by the butt.
I told her, I said, we were laughing so hard, it probably started laughing, whatever it was, because it's so funny.
I guess I'm entertainment for everybody.
I understand the terror of it's time to haul butt, and you're the driver, and your door is the one next to the tree line. Like, I've experienced that several times, and it's not fun. I've watched grown men crawl over the passenger seat just to avoid having to go around on that side. So don't feel too bad.
Not me. You don't park my side by the trees.
I mean, when your hind end is sticking in the weeds where this thing's coming up out of the water, I was having all kinds of imaginations, and they were not good.
It's literally your butt on the line.
Yes. It was that was scary. And as we were driving away, I swore I heard something in the weeds. I mean, in the wood line right next to us, like running. And when it did, I laid my foot on that gas. We were out of there.
Me and my nephew, we went to a graveyard once. This is a place where people had close to an area where other sightings of Bigfoots have been.
That we found out later.
Yeah. And we went to this fence line there in that graveyard, and we started making Bigfoot calls and knocking on trees. And then after just a little bit, something started knocking back. But it wasn't in the graveyard. It was past the fence. But it sounded underground, and it sounded like it was hitting metal. Have you ever heard of anything like that?
I have not heard of anything underground, but I have heard of like a metallic knocking noise before.
Yeah, it sounded like a metallic sound. So I thought it was underground, but it was on the other side of the graveyard.
Well, I mean, I can tell you right now, if I'm in a graveyard and I hear something underground, I'm leaving. So
Yeah.
somebody else will have to solve that mystery, because I'm going to Scooby-Doo it on out.
We kept listening, and it kept doing it every once in a while. And we took a bunch of pictures, but there was nothing in the pictures, and we couldn't see anything. But that was really strange.
And you said there's been Bigfoot sightings in this area?
Uh-huh.
Yeah.
Not too far from there, my daughter has a church. And
I might have told you about that one.
People clean at night. At nighttime, when they're cleaning, they'd hear somebody rattling the doorknob. And I think the doorknob had been eventually broken off from the outside. But while this one lady was cleaning, she thought there was a hobo sitting in the wood line.
A hairy hobo.
Hairy hobo, yeah. So they started hollering at him and asked him if he's needing help, but it never would respond. So they didn't know whether it was human or not, which I think it was a Bigfoot. And another gentleman there that cleaned, he was outside. I don't know if he was getting in his car or putting trash or what he was doing, but he looked across the street from the church, and there was a Bigfoot walking, going up over the hill. And then they have another gentleman that goes to their church, and they would have little outings at places and tell stories at night. But this one guy had he was telling them a Bigfoot story about a Bigfoot on his property and how it was in the snowy wintertime. And Bigfoot had picked up his propane tank and moved it. But it had left the prints, going up to it, and I guess leaving from it after it had moved it over.
Like one of the big propane tanks?
Yeah, one of those big house propane tanks outside.
We have a local page that's, for the people in our town. And somebody had mentioned that they were doing a paper. I was for the school. And they were needing, I believe it was English class or something, but they were writing on Bigfoot and wondered if anybody had ever had a sighting or had, or any kind of thing like that. Well, the page completely went crazy, but we live in a small town like us, names. So I was kind of shocked at some of the names I seen because they were all older people. Mm-hmm. These were like way older people, and they were all telling their experiences, which I was telling you that it's on the same river where my sister had her sighting, but downstream.
Yeah.
past our town, there's a big park, and there's thick wooded areas with trails, and all of their sightings were in this area. And then, but I mean, it had, you know, that was probably 3 or 4 months ago when that happened, when they were talking about that. But I mean, they didn't go into detail. They were just like, yeah, we seen something, you know, running through the woods, and it was big and tall and hairy and things like that. But recently here, my son, before he left, was down there fishing with my sister's son at the river, and a policeman comes up and started talking to them. Well, let me start from the beginning. Earlier in that morning, they had found a body up here in the river, and so there was a lot of police and GRDA and everything, you know, going up and down the river. I don't know if they were maybe looking for other people just in case, you know, just kind of doing a search. But later on that night, they were down there fishing, my son and my nephew, and a policeman come up to them and asked if they'd seen anything. And my nephew said no, and he said, well, we had a fisherman out here in the boat with his son, and this big hairy man in a black hoodie in the woods threw a huge rock from the bank to them, almost hitting them. And the guy said if it would have hit, you know, the kid, it would have killed him. And so immediately my nephew, who laughs at us, turns and looks at my son, because they're thinking hairy man in a hoodie,
Yeah.
you know, and throwing a rock. Well, people do spoonbill fishing, and, you know, that's got heavy weights on these fishing poles up here. It's a type of fish they fish for every year. Well, my nephew was talking about that, and he's like, if you realize how hard it is to actually throw something really heavy, he said the distance that was supposed to be thrown, he's like, I'm just thinking there's just no way. You know, he was thinking it'd be very impossible for a man to do that.
Right.
But I thought that was real mysterious. Again, I'm not saying that's Bigfoot. But
Right. I remember you telling me about that whenever it was going on, and I read a lot of the articles that were coming out about it, because it was pretty big news. At least, you know, here. And did they ever come to any conclusion as to what happened to the guy that they found in the water or anything?
I don't know. I'd never heard what the autopsy found on him, because as far as I knew, he was, you know, a young, pretty healthy guy. Now, I did hear a rumor, and I'm saying, you know how small towns are, so I do not know if it's true or not, but his cousin supposedly said that he, the guy that was, you know, deceased, called him in a panic, and he said that the guy that was on the other end said he heard a big noise, and then the phone went off. So I don't, you know, that was just something I heard through the rumor mill, but
Right.
Yeah,
I don't know if that's, you know, you don't know around here anyway if that's true or not. But I just thought that was really odd for all that to happen. I thought if it, you know, maybe if it was a Bigfoot, maybe it was ticked off because there was a lot of boats and police presence, you know, because he wasn't really found, I guess, in that main Neosho River. He was found in another little river that comes out into the Neosho River, right in there.
Yeah, it was just kind of a weird deal. Usually here in the, you know, we have a lot of drowning victims each year. A lot of water in Oklahoma, believe it or not.
Right.
And usually they follow up the stories, you know, once the autopsy comes out or something. But, like, I never found anything. they were looking for information about how this guy ended up in the river. It even took them a while, it seemed like, before they even gave away details about who he was or anything.
Right. And I had never really heard of him or his name before. And I never heard anything about it, what they found on that. I'd like to know, though. I mean, it's tragic.
Well, I appreciate you guys coming on and sharing your stories. I know it can be difficult, especially with the way that, friends and family often react to these types of things. But I do appreciate it.
I know we might sound silly, but, we're just real. We have scary moments and we laugh about things that happen,
I've done a lot of research and I have no clue.
Well, by sharing the stories, you never know what, little piece of the puzzle you're going to put out there that somebody else might be missing.
And I never knew that Bigfoot was a big creature. I really didn't know anything about it.
It's always interesting to talk to people that have seen a Bigfoot but weren't trying to see a Bigfoot, weren't thinking about Bigfoot, didn't have preconceived notions about them.
Exactly. That's why I always liked her story so much, was because she knew it was something. She knew it had hair and these big eyes, and she sees it look down at her husband, her ex-husband, so it was alive.
That's what made it real to me, when it turned its eyes, and I thought, oh.
Be sure to check out my other podcast, Planet Fear, where myself and Lauren Smith talk about all the fearful and frightening things out there, from encounters with the paranormal to stories of true crime. Go to planetfearpodcast.com for new episodes and links to all the places you can find us.